What if I told you that your first $100,000 is the absolute hardest to save, but literally everything gets easier after that? It's true. Building that initial wealth usually starts by just plugging the leaks, those sneaky places where you're losing money without even realizing it. So let me ask you a question. Would you ever just tear up a $1,300 bonus check from your boss? You'd probably say no way, but honestly, about 1 in 4 American workers effectively do exactly that every single year. By not contributing enough to their retirement accounts to get the full employer 401k match, they're leaving an average of over $1,300 unclaimed annually. And if you project that out over 20 years, thanks to the incredible power of compound interest, that is over $40,000 completely gone. It's wild to think about, right? Well, welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we've got a fantastic journey mapped out. We're looking at a complete blueprint to building wealth, zooming from the micro all the way out to the macro. We'll start right inside your personal wallet with the daily habits that can seriously accelerate your path to that first $100,000. And then we're going to zoom all the way out to look at the massive global economic forces that secretly shape your money behind the scenes. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. First, building foundational wealth habits. Second, mastering your credit score. Third, maximizing investments and protections. Fourth, the Fed and your wallet. And fifth, navigating global tax rules. All right, Section 1, building foundational wealth habits. So there's actually a pretty stark contrast in mindset when it comes to money. You see, when an average consumer's income goes up, they almost immediately experience lifestyle inflation. They upgrade the car, book fancier vacations, maybe buy some status symbols to look rich. But self-made millionaires, they do the exact opposite. They actively avoid lifestyle inflation. Instead of buying status, they're buying assets. We're talking stocks, real estate, or businesses. They aren't thinking about impressing people this weekend. They're thinking 10 or 20 years down the line. Because wealth isn't usually built with one giant lucky decision. It's built with these small, smart habits repeated over decades. And that brings us to a crucial piece of ancient wisdom derived from the richest man in Babylon, which is pay yourself first. Seriously, take 10% of the salary you make and put it right into a savings account. Before you pay rent, before you pay for Netflix or your internet bill, you absolutely must pay yourself. The ultimate goal here is to build a solid 3 to 6 month emergency fund. One of our sources beautifully compares this to saving a drop of water to help you cross a scorching desert. If a financial drought hits, that emergency fund is exactly what's going to keep you alive. Now, once that emergency fund is locked in, you definitely want to start making your money work for you. But here is a golden rule you can't ignore. Avoid investing in what you don't understand. Our sources share a pretty painful anecdote about an investor back in 2017 who watched Bitcoin and altcoins absolutely skyrocket. Caught up in the hype and major FOMO, they blindly threw around $10,000 into altcoins without having a clue how the underlying technology or the business actually worked. And when the market crashed, they panic sold and lost almost everything. So please don't let FOMO destroy your hard-earned money. Stick to what you actually understand. Moving right along to Section 2, mastering your credit score. You know, the FICO credit score really isn't a mystery. It's just a specific mathematical formula. Let's break down the exact math. A massive 35% of your score is purely your payment history. That means paying on time every single time is literally the most important thing you can do. The second biggest chunk, coming in at 30%, is your amounts owed. You might know this as your credit utilization ratio. The rest of the pie is made up of the length of your credit history, new credit inquiries, and your credit mix. Your credit score is a huge part of your financial identity in America, so knowing this math is absolutely crucial. Let's talk a bit more about that 30% chunk, your utilization rate. Say you have a credit card with a $2,000 limit and you consistently carry a $1,500 balance. That gives you a 75% utilization rate. Now, to creditors, that number is a giant red flag. It signals that you might be biting off more than you can chew, or maybe relying on credit to supplement your income. To protect your score and lock in the best possible interest rates for your future self, you really want to keep your balances as low as absolutely possible. Okay, on to Section 3, maximizing investments and protections. Let's circle back to that 401k match we talked about at the very beginning. Let's walk through the math on a quick scenario. Say you earn a $60,000 salary, and your employer matches 100% of your contributions up to 4%. If you set your contribution rate at just 2%, your employer throws in $1,200. But if you literally just log into your portal and bump that one setting from 2% to 4%, your employer match instantly doubles to $2,400. It's the exact same job, the exact same paycheck, but you just unlocked an extra $1,200 of literally free money. Seriously, go check your settings today. Now, as you start building up your portfolio, you're going to hear a lot about fixed income assets, especially treasury bonds. Basically, a treasury bond is a U.S. government debt security with a 10 to 30-year maturity. It pays out a fixed interest rate twice a year, and it's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So they're considered incredibly safe benchmark investments. Historically speaking, since 1900, they've yielded around 5%. But while they're essentially safe from default, you do have to remember they carry inflation risk. If inflation outpaces your yield, your real purchasing power actually drops. When you're navigating all these investment choices, you might decide to seek out a financial professional, but you really need to know exactly who you're dealing with. Former SEC Chairman Jay Clayton suggests asking them this incredibly direct question. If I work with you, how much of my money is going to fees and costs, and how much is going to work for me? You have to understand the difference between broker-dealers and investment advisors so you know exactly what services you're paying for. Always, always advocate for your money, and don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. All right, Section 4, the Fed and your wallet. It all starts right here with the federal funds rate. This is simply the interest rate at which commercial banks charge each other to borrow money overnight to meet their reserve requirements. When inflation gets too high, the Fed raises this overnight rate to slow the economy down. But here's the catch for us. Banks don't just eat that extra cost. Nope, they pass it right on to you. They take that Fed funds rate, add about 3% to it, and boom, you get the prime rate. Almost instantly, your credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages, and auto loans become more expensive. Plus, as borrowing gets costlier for businesses, they often implement cost-cutting measures, which can unfortunately tighten job security for everyone across the board. Now, the Fed is technically designed to be independent, but historically, they've faced massive political pressure. Founded back in 1913, the Fed was later pushed by President Truman to keep interest rates artificially low to help fund war debts. When Truman actually lied to the press about their agreement, it led to the 1951 Treasury-Fed Accord, which officially cemented the Fed's independence. Then, in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson literally invited the Fed chair to his Texas ranch, took him on a wild, bumpy ride in his Cadillac convertible, and just berated him for raising rates. Fast forward to 1979, and Fed Chair Paul Volcker took highly unpopular aggressive action to raise rates to kill skyrocketing inflation. It worked, but it ultimately cost President Jimmy Carter his re-election. It's this fascinating historical tug-of-war between short-term politics and long-term economic stability. So how do you actually survive when the Fed inevitably hikes those rates? You focus purely on what you can control. First, aggressively pay down any high-interest, double-digit debt before those variable rates climb even higher. Second, because borrowing is so expensive, banks really want your deposits. So get online and shop around for high-yield savings accounts to maximize the interest you're earning. Third, bulk up that emergency fund just in case the job market cools down. And finally, whatever you do, don't panic during market swings. Just keep consistently investing in low-cost index funds so you can ride out the volatility. And finally, Section 5, navigating global tax rules. Okay, imagine this. You lived in the U.S. but moved back to India mid-year, let's say in August. You were in the U.S. for over 183 days, and you'll be in India for over 182 days of their financial year. Suddenly, both countries consider you a tax resident. To avoid getting taxed twice on the exact same income, you'd look to the Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement, or DTAA. Article 4 outlines these specific tiebreaker tests. First, they look at where your permanent home is. If that's unclear, they look at your center of vital interests, basically where your personal and economic ties are strongest. Next is your habitual abode, which is where you actually spend most of your time. And finally, nationality. Following these exact steps determines which country gets the primary taxing rates. But remember, the U.S. taxes its citizens and residents on their worldwide income. You absolutely cannot ignore compliance here. You have to file specific forms. The FBR is required if you have foreign accounts totaling over $10,000. Form 8938 covers FATCA requirements. Did you receive an inheritance or gift over $100,000 from abroad? That requires Form 3520. And to actually claim those foreign tax credits we just mentioned, you'll need Form 67 in India and Form 1116 in the U.S. Look, the IRS isn't playing around. Failing to report can trigger automatic, severe penalties that start at 5% and can easily reach up to 25% of the asset's value. You've got to stay organized. We have covered a ton of ground today, zooming all the way from the daily choices in your personal budget right up to navigating complex global tax laws. So I want to leave you with this final thought. From your daily budget to global tax laws, where are your specific wealth-building leaks, and what is one habit you will change today to fix them? Whether it's logging into your 401k portal right this second to increase your match, finally starting that emergency fund, or paying down a high-balance credit card, take action today. Make sure to subscribe for weekly USA Personal Finance explainers that help you build wealth. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep pushing toward that first $100,000.